Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me. That's right, this is No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss. Happy to be here with you again today. Just in case you haven't been here before, we normally do long-form political commentary here on the show. If you had seen some of my recent videos, I'm still not feeling 100%, still fighting I think it may be a pneumonia, could be COVID, could be just a cold. But there was something that, because I was feeling better today, I wanted to try and catch up on some of the news that I had been missing. And something just stood out, and I said, oh my God, this can't be true. This can't be real. This has to be fake. And I was shocked. And I found it first, to give all credit to it. I was watching Tim Pool and one of his casts. He's one of probably about 24 sources that I use for information to start off with, and some of the other places that I look at besides the New York Times and so forth. And in this video, talking about what's going on with the presidential debates and the likelihood that this is something that's being rigged, the upcoming debates, more importantly, he mentioned Deadline.com, and an article from October 8th on Deadline. So then I had to go and check it out for myself. And sure enough, there it is, October 8th, 2020 at 3:57 p.m., the Deadline.com team presented this story, that they had published a mistake made on the vice president, as in Vice President, it was Vice President Mike Pence, and the coronavirus. Now, let's get this straight. The big thing here is that this is manipulation. This is a pure, unadulterated, absolute manipulation of the public. That their readers, this is the definition of fake news. No question about it. They put out an article, and according to them, as it's listed here, a draft post of a story about Vice President Mike Pence testing positive for coronavirus that was never meant to publish was accidentally posted on Deadline. Now, stop right there. Why do you have a draft post of a story that doesn't exist? There is no evidence that Vice President Mike Pence is, in fact, has coronavirus, that he's ever had COVID-19. There's nothing about that. And even if he did, how can you write the story today if he doesn't have it today, if he doesn't have it now? That doesn't make any sense. What are you trying to reference? That's a manipulation. That means they're putting together some arbitrary information, and if and when they get an opportunity, they're going to blast out this news story that doesn't have anything to do with the reality. It has to do with the political messaging. They're after a political message. That's the only way you get a draft post of a story. I mean, I want to be very clear. And I want to thank Tim Pool, because he came up with it. He found this first. And I had to check it out for myself. But the fact that yesterday, October 8th, we saw that Deadline has a fake story ready to go against Vice President Mike Pence tells you they don't care about the news. That's what that tells me. Now, I understand it's buried. It's something you're not going to notice. It's part of their correction, and good for them for making a correction. I'm not blaming them for making the correction. That's not it. I've made mistakes here. I came out, I published that mistake and admitted where I was wrong. That's happened. I don't know of a news organization that hasn't made a mistake at some point. So I'm not going to call them out for having made a mistake. That happens. What I am calling them out on is that they are manipulating their audience because they are staging stories, that they have issues made up and ready to go, and that this is what they are presenting as actual news to their audience. That is wrong. It makes me think of a couple of other things. Now, this is one example of an emotional manipulation, of a manipulation of the media, which they have lots of backing, to put out there this misinformation to get an emotional outcome, to get you to feel a certain way for their political gain. And we've seen that in other cases as well. Matter of fact, I want to go back to, there was this article from the Pipe Dream. Now, a lot of people may not know what Pipe Dream is. Pipe Dream is the college newspaper at the University of Binghamton. Okay, or rather, I should say Binghamton University. And Binghamton University is under federal investigation because of its First Amendment violations. Now, this is a long story, and I started covering that back in October of 2019. We saw a major explosion of First Amendment violations by Binghamton University back in November of 2019, including what happened to Dr. Art Laffer, who I did eventually get to do a exclusive with because of that event. But in this article by the Pipe Dream, they are the second news organization. There was myself, and now Pipe Dream are the only news organizations in the nation that I am aware of that have actually addressed the fact that Binghamton University is being investigated by the Department of Education. And this article by Nicole Kaufman that was published on October 8th is useless and also wrong. It's a retelling of exactly what we already know. Now, I did comment on it because people deserve to know when they're being manipulated, when the media is using them. And Binghamton University is using, I believe that Binghamton University is using its power and its influence over the college newspaper to force them to put out a story that's going to benefit Binghamton University, that gives them some cover on this story, that gives them some shade from the intense attention that will eventually come to them. Because when the Department of Education is investigating a college for denying the First Amendment rights to some of its students because of the mere purpose or because of the mere fact that the university, in particular President Harvey Stenger and his administration, do not agree with the politics of some of their students, you know what? That's going to be, the hell is going to come down from the government onto this university, and it will be a signal for every other university. But this is another form of emotional manipulation, where we're seeing that this article is using some random individual first of all, this article just it just restates all of the non-essential parts of the actual investigation and leaves out one of the most critical parts, which I've covered before, but I want to go over it again, is that the actions of Binghamton University and the omissions suggest serious reason for the Department of Education to be concerned that Binghamton's many representations about free speech and student conduct to students, parents, and consumers, not 100% yet, to students, parents, and consumers in the market for education certificates may be false, erroneous, or misleading in violation of several federal codes. The article doesn't address that at all. The article does not go on to address, as I mentioned, it does not mention the question of the status of free expression of views on Binghamton University campus, either in November 2019 or now, and preferably both. Instead, we get an individual whose name is Stephen Perez and his opinion of what the First Amendment is. Who cares? And I don't mean this to be mean to Stephen Perez, but I'm saying, who cares? So a student has an opinion of the First Amendment that is incorrect. that is defined by feelings, which is wrong. And they restate that the university is being investigated. But that's not telling you why they're investigated. It's not telling you how this is going to affect the students. It doesn't tell you how is this going to affect the community, the financial income of this. What this is doing is providing a buffer zone for the university to continue to do what it's doing. To say that, well, the students must like this because the only person being quoted is someone who agrees with the university's position. But that position is fundamentally wrong. That's why they're being investigated, because that isn't the First Amendment. That isn't the rights or what's being represented by Binghamton University. So again, much like the issue that we saw with the Deadline article, the manipulation is going on. People have an emotion. They're using emotions to try and take advantage of the reader, either with a story that's made up and just being thrown out there whenever it's useful to get a political goal, or in the case where we see that the university is using its power to create a message that helps them in their goal of silencing people. Now, you may say to yourself, well, Mike, where does all this come from? How does this happen? I mean, why are we seeing this in the world right now? Well, I'll give you a great reason why. Because we get to see things like what we see with Keith Olbermann. Now, you may be saying, gee, Mike, Keith Olbermann, I don't remember that guy. I mean, the name maybe sounds somewhat familiar. Well, Keith Olbermann back in the day was a liberal of note before he got kicked off of pretty much every major news organization in the country. Disgraced himself. But last time he was actually relevant was back in October, believe it or not, October 7th in 2011, 9 years ago. But in that time, 9 years ago, we did an article of him back in our Voss political commentary, which you can go look up. The links will be in the comments. We addressed one of his comments about Occupy Binghamton, which was one of the forerunners to some of the protests that we see across the nation today. Not violent, but very much in the same vein. And he made a manifesto. He was pushing this emotional message in promotion of a socialist communist state. And in fact, we went on to say, one of the things that he pointed out is that the only answer is that the universal collective of humanity is the only answer that could be there. And he offered no proof, sensationalistic wording, factually incorrect statements, wording meant to evoke emotional rather than logical thought. That's Keith Olbermann from 9 years ago. And today, we get to hear this from Keith Olbermann.
Trump can be and must be expunged. The hate he has triggered, the Pandora's box he has opened, they will not be so easily destroyed. So, let us brace ourselves. The task is twofold. The terrorist Trump must be defeated, must be destroyed, must be devoured at the ballot box. And then he and his enablers and his supporters and his collaborators and the Mike Lees and the William Barrs and the Sean Hannitys and the Mike Pences and the Rudy Giulianis and the Kyle Rittenhouses and the Amy Coney Barretts must be prosecuted and convicted and removed from our society while we try to rebuild it and to rebuild the world Trump has nearly destroyed by turning it over to a virus. Remember it, even as we dream of a return to reality and safety and the country for which our forefathers died, that the fight is not just to win an election, but to win it by enough to chase, at least for a moment, Trump and the maggots off the stage, and then try to clean up what they left. Remember it, even though to remember it means remembering that the fight does not end November 3rd, but in many ways will only begin that day.
Can you imagine what he just said? Think about what he just said. He just said so many things that are troubling, dangerous. He's talking about expunging. That means removing from all memory, removing as if it never existed. He's talking about destroying Trump, President Trump, to go after a group of people. He has a hit list of individuals that he wants people to go after, to punish. I mean, we're talking about people like, he mentions Kyle Rittenhouse. That's an individual by video evidence who defended his life. And he wants him to be punished. He wants him to be attacked. He talked about Amy Coney Barrett, a Supreme Court justice who's only negative, apparently, not that she's an innocent choir person, not that she's some angel, but the only problem that she has that has been identified from the far left, or the left at all, is that she's the mom of interracial children. That she has 2 adopted children that happen to be of a different race than her own. That she believes in the right to life. How terrible a person is that? And that's his message to the public. We have to punish them. We have to expunge them. He wants to get rid of the 50% of the nation, roughly, that voted in the last election. That last election versus Hillary versus Trump, that was nearly a 50-50 race in terms of the popular vote. And he wants to expunge. He wants to remove. He devalues the American citizens to the point of considering them maggots, vermin. This is the emotional manipulation that we're talking about right now. This is the emotional manipulation that is being done so that people who are on the left or who happen to be Democrats and aren't familiar with the issues are hearing this individual who they believe may be some figure of note because he's being talked about on Twitter. He's been on TV. He's a personality. So therefore, he must have some kind of knowledge. He must be important in some kind of way. And in fact, no, he's really pretty much a socialist who is out there who actively seeks to remove our nation and remove our rights, talking about his Marxist themes from back in 2011, which is why he's been removed from every credible major news media association. This is the reason why we see people like Deadline doing what they do, why we see Binghamton University being able to get away with what they're doing, because they're promoting this. Keith Olbermann 11 years ago may have inspired some of the professors that are now teaching at Binghamton University or working at Deadline right now. You want to talk about a virus? Talk about the virus of emotionally manipulating people without any factual evidence. President Trump has been investigated by everyone on the left since before he got into elected office, and they have not proven the case against him. I'm not saying he's an angel. I'm not saying he's a good man. I am saying that there is no evidence of him doing anything illegal, including paying his taxes. And yes, he paid less, which is something we all try to do, but he did it legally. That's the law that, yes, believe it or not, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, that's the law they helped create. He used that law to pay less in taxes. So again, President Trump hasn't done anything, but they want you to hate him. He is Orange Man bad because Keith Olbermann and other individuals on the far left say he must be bad. Otherwise, their lives are wasted. Their ideology is useless. He has to be evil. And they have to do things like setting up what you're reading ahead of time, making up their stories without any regard to what is actually factually happening, so that they can get that out to you as fast as possible to make sure that they have your attention and they get you on the right mindset. These are three types of manipulations we see happening right now, every day. And it's very important because media has learned a lesson and it's being taught in our colleges. And what is that? Is read the headline, get the emotional hook, get people to think the way you want them to think. And it doesn't matter if it's true. It doesn't matter if it's factual. It doesn't matter if it's going to hurt them in the long term. Don't let them think about what's going to happen next. That's what the majority of media does. That's why this show is no sound bites allowed. It's why we do long form political commentary. Because of these kind of things. Because of what we're seeing with Keith Olbermann in 1 minute and 23 seconds. It's because of what's happening with Deadline.com. It's because of the actions at Binghamton University. And again, I want to thank Tim Pool for making me aware of the story because I hadn't caught it before. Deadline isn't one of the sources that I would normally look at, but it helps to point out what's happening here. The manipulation that we are seeing in so many forms of news media, in so many ways, that we are being manipulated, that we are being used, that we are being goaded to give a very small elite group of individuals all of the power, irregardless of the Constitution that ensures we have all the power in this government. Be aware of this emotional manipulation. No facts, no truth, just a lot of manipulation to make you feel like you have no choice but to agree and to be absolutely silent if you don't, because they're going to use the full power and weight of their institutions against you. Something we need to fight against. I didn't want this to be a long video. And I'm not feeling perfect, but I thank you for taking a moment to listen. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear your reason why. Why are those not three forms of manipulation that we see mainstream and spread from our colleges to our news media? Tell me why you think I'm wrong. Please share with me your thoughts. And again, I'll look forward to seeing you on Sunday, this Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when we will do our live stream. And sick or not, I will be doing that live stream and I'll be talking with you. So until then, be healthy and I'll talk to you soon.